Today, I'm really excited to have pet photographer Richie Schwartz here with me from New York. With 30 years of photography experience behind him, Richie is a former veterinary technician and dog trainer and affectionately known as the dog whisperer of pet photographers. Richie is one of the country's most successful pet photography specialists, and he founded and owns Pets Photography Studio, one of the largest pet-only photography companies in the USA, where he and his personally trained staff have photographed over 75,000 pets. He is also the exclusive photographer for a major pet supply store chain in the tri-state region, as well as a regular speaker and educator at area photography clubs, pet expos, and other events where he offers pet photography seminars and workshops. Richie also volunteers his time and services to raise funds and awareness for animal rescue shelters and pet welfare organizations. So, hi Richie, it's great to have you here with us today.
Woof, woof. Hi, Nigel.
Yeah, woof, woof.
Thank you for the introduction, and it's a pleasure. To be here. I'm glad that you asked me, and glad that I'm here.
You know, I don't think we've had a pet photographer on here before, so this is going to be really interesting and exciting.
There you go.
But before we get into all of that, what was it that first got you interested in becoming a professional pet photographer?
You know, I'm going to answer that, but before, I'm just going to make one correction in what you said in the beginning, because it said 30 years experience. We're now at 35 years, so I have to update something somewhere. You know what? Back in the 70s, when I was in my 20s, I was working in an animal. Well, let me go back even beyond that. I grew up in a home where we had a nice group of people in my family. There's 5 kids. My parents lived there. My grandparents lived there. We had a housekeeper. There was always people there. And my mom's best friend was a photographer. He was like the town photographer. We grew up in a small town, like 30,000 people. I was just fascinated by whenever we were having a party or get together, this guy would come over, whip out the camera, put us all in a group and say funny stuff and do tricks and take our picture. And the whole thing really just fascinated me from the time I was a little kid. I just thought it was almost like some kids want to be a clown in the circus. I thought, boy, this guy is a clown. I'd like to do what he does. And, you know, over the years, it sort of just followed up on that. As I grew up, I grew up in a beach town, so we started surfing. I was 14 years old, and I started taking pictures of that and pass them around and send them into the local surf magazines, and took some classes in high school. And it just became my hobby. Fast forwarding about 10 years, I had, moved off to college, went to California, came back to New York, and I was working in an animal hospital. Yes, and my parents, I'm not sure, they were thrilled, sending me off to college, coming back to work in an animal hospital. They trained me there to be a technician and then grooming. And so what happened to me was I was grooming dogs, and I would take their pictures, my hobby, and hang them up in the waiting room. And people at some point started to say, hey, can we buy one of those pictures of my dog, that you're hanging up? And Nigel, that's where it all started turning. After a couple of years of that, I realized that maybe that's something I could do for a living, having loved it and been my hobby for all those years. That's really what happened. I saw something in the newspaper about photographer wanted, we'll train you, we'll give you equipment and this and that. And I literally quit my job on a Friday, and Monday I was working as getting my training in the studio. And the funny thing, it was baby pictures, back then. And I'm talking about 1980 was the year. They did what we call kidnapping, but, that was our term for it. You go house to house with equipment and portable lights and a backdrop and newborn kids and infants, and you set up in the kitchen and take some pictures. And that was what we did. And I did that for a few years, and that was my beginning.
So 35 years in pet photography. I mean, that's a long time, to have been in the business. And I'm sure that you've seen a whole lot of different changes and things that have come and things that have gone and all that kind of thing. And to keep a business going for that length of time as well is a real testament. Obviously, you must have pretty good business knowledge and good business sense to keep a business going so long. How would you describe your particular business model for pet photography as it is now?
Yeah, Nigel, thank you for that. I'm either really smart or just really lucky. It wouldn't surprise me if I was just lucky. But just to be clear, I haven't been a pet photography specialist all 35 years. Like I said, I started out doing babies. I kind of went from there into working for a newspaper, doing photojournalism. Then I got a job with a school photographer and learned that whole business. And then it was after that I opened my own place. And we had a studio down there in Long Beach, and we did school photography and weddings and bar mitzvahs, communions, sweet 16s, and baby pictures. So we were doing that. And I did that for about, I'm going to say about 22, 23 years. Back around, I guess, 13, 14 years ago, I found something on the internet about pet photography, and I said, that sounds cool. And without getting too crazy with the details, I wound up going up to Canada, partnering with some people, and we started this big pet photography company. This is where my model for my present day business comes from. I guess in the US, we're used to the Sears Portrait Studios or Kmart or Walmart Portrait Studios, which are closed now. But we kind of wanted to do the same thing, but with pet stores like Petco and PetSmart. We came up with a plan and we approached, somebody at these corporate stores, and that's what we started to do. We ourselves, we hired photographers, we trained them, and we were able to present to these big stores one invoice, one price, one ad, one quality, one customer service, which was quite different from the way it was for them. Each store was hiring a different guy, and so it was really attractive to them. And we built that up into a company where, when I left them, we were doing about 600 stores across 35 states with Petco and PetSmart. For me, it was really tough. It was just on the road a lot because I was, just became the operations manager for that. And so with all these locations, I was just on the road. So I did come back to Long Island, New York, the end of 2005. And I said, you know what? I'm just going to do what I was doing, but it'll be my own smaller company. And that's what happened. And, I called up one of the stores and I said, hey, I'm on my own now. And can we go on with this? And of course, they loved me. So they said, sure. And so my business model is the best way to describe it is to say I'm the school photographer of pet photography.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah.
The model is, some photographers, you have a studio and people come to you. And there's only a certain radius that you're going to draw people there. No one's, not usually going to drive 2-3 hours or even 40 minutes if you're in a nice, packed urban area like I am. We go, like the school photographer, every day you go to another location. You go where the kids are to photograph them, and what I do is go where the pets are. So what we do is partner with other pet stores, whether they're chain stores, big ones like Petco, PetSmart, or smaller ones like Pet Supplies Plus, or even smaller ones. We do a few. They own 4 or 5 stores, or even the mom and pop stores. We partner with grooming salons, with kennels, with veterinarians, with boutiques. What it does is it gives these people, these other stores, a service that they don't really want to do themselves. They don't know how to do it. It's a lot of hassle. It's much easier to have somebody else come in and do it. It's a service. They get to give that to their customers. So they're offering something maybe the competition isn't. And what happens for us as a business in photography is we get to have customers all over the place who wouldn't otherwise even know about us, much less be driving to where my studio is. And I have a studio. My model is based on volume because we're going to these stores. We want to go to a pet store. We do pre-booking. So when we get there, we know how many people are coming in. We plan for it that way. I'm okay with taking less money per person, but I know that we're going to each location and getting a whole bunch of people. And in my studio, it's different. It's more of a personal service. It's private. It's a more high end, and the prices are higher. But it's a different service. The session is longer. Sitting fee is higher. Really, that's what we do. It's all about partnering with other businesses and making it work for us, making it work for them. Some of them like to take a percentage of the profits, and that's okay with me because it's money we wouldn't have otherwise. Some of them just say, hey, you know what, take 10%, donate it to charity. That's fine with me too. That's how it works. One of the things that I do is, because we hire other photographers, we can actually, for instance, on a particular day, let's say a Saturday or Sunday, we can have photographers in 3 or 4 different locations on the same day. So as far as, business, it's not just me going out and shooting in one place one day. day, we're getting the income from all these different stores on that day. So very much like the school photography.
I think it's great that you've managed to adapt that model to pets. I think probably pets are more well-behaved than most school children these days. So you probably got the good end of the stick. Although, didn't anyone ever tell you never work with kids and animals?
I'll tell you something funny, Nigel. I've probably just because of my training, in my past as a, vet tech and groomer and, learning how to read the body language of dogs and what they're really saying. And I've never been bitten by a dog. Well, a cat once, but a long time ago. But I actually got bit by a kid when I was a school photographer. Oh, in my mind, dogs don't bite, but kids do.
So you talked about this whole thing about partnering up with local businesses and that kind of thing, like Petco, PetSmart. Those are quite large companies.
Yeah.
Here where I live, we have all those, of course, but we also have a smaller, locally owned, small chain of pet food and supply stores. Would you say that this business model that you have could be scaled down, if you like, for a smaller photographer who wants to maybe just concentrate on perhaps one or two local stores in their area?
Absolutely. I mean, there's no reason to limit it to one or two, but certainly I know a lot of pet photographers that do that. With the advent of Facebook and all the connections and the groups that you make, I'm in a whole bunch of different pet photography groups. And so I meet, online at least pet photographers from all over the country, all over the world, really. And everybody's got their own little way of doing things. But I always suggest to people just, first start out with a local veterinarian, go down to your local pet store where you shop, for your own pets. Call up your groomer, go talk to them and see if you could set up a pet photo day. Doesn't have to be hundreds of stores. It doesn't have to be that. You can definitely just start with a couple stores and do it like that. Tell you what, a mistake a lot of these pet photographers do that I see, or in my mind, it's a mistake. I don't know what they think. Right now, this time of year, I'm getting a lot of questions about, and I'm seeing a lot of talk about doing a full photo session, with the leaves and pumpkins, and then doing setting something up a day for Christmas pictures, for holiday pictures. And, the only thing that ever comes in my mind is, why are they limiting to these two holidays? Why aren't they doing this every week or every month? These are things that don't have to be so limited. I think people just don't think that way. I'm a fan of Donald Trump's business. And there's one thing that he said that I heard, and it stuck in my head for years. He said, as long as you're going to think anyway, why not think big? I've said, wow, but that's pretty simple, and it's true. So, for me, that's it. It probably came a little easier to me. You have to definitely have some sort of entrepreneurial spirit and knowledge. And here's the problem, Nigel. You're a photographer, so you've seen this. You can't be successful on your photography alone. You have to know how to run a business. And I think this is where a lot of people come into problems. But even more so with pet photography, because people pick up a camera, they get a new puppy, they get a new camera, and they're taking pictures of their pet, and they think, hey, I could do this for a living. And they might take some really nice shots of animals, but the business side is a whole nother thing that most people don't stop to think about until they're, stuck in the quicksand.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And talking of success, what do you feel are the qualities that are essential for someone who wants to do well as a pet photographer?
Must love pets.
Definitely. We'll put that number one on the list.
Patience, number 2. Number 3 and 4 would be patience, and number 5 and 6 would be patience.
So must love pets, patience, and perhaps a bit more patience.
Right, exactly. Taking pictures of people, whatever age they are, almost. You say, hey, look at me, turn your head this way, chin down, eyes up, move your glasses, turn to the right, shoulder back. You can't do that with a dog. And you really can't do that with a cat. And so one of the things, you really have to learn how to understand animals. You really have to be a pet lover and, understand their psyche, maybe study them. I would certainly suggest that if you're not comfortable around animals, that this is not going to be the job for you, no matter how much fun it looks. And, I've learned something interesting over the last couple of years. There's a lot of people who call themselves pet photographers, but they're actually dog photographers. I talked to one yesterday in a pet photography group and, said something about cats. And she says, oh, no, I'm allergic to cats, or I'm scared of cats. And I just do dogs, So I think even within that niche of pet photography, there are some breakdowns there where people just doing dogs or people just doing reptiles. And then there's other people, I guess, like me. And it's really only because of where I've been working that we have no control over who's coming into these stores. And we've been able to do all kinds of animals. Really, you have to love all kinds of animals. You're not going to be really a great pet photographer if you're scared of cats, or if iguanas scare you, or these kinds of things. We've had to photograph snakes and rats and mice, and some people get the creeps with that, but they're really cute. I've had people come in with alligators, pet chickens, pet goats, pet pigs, pet ducks. It's a lot of fun, and it's stuff I would never think. The first time someone came in with a pet chicken, I thought, oh, well, okay, that's different.
I'm sorry. I just am left with this image of the pet store with a line of people and people complaining, say, that guy's alligator just ate my pet chicken, and the snake ate my rat, and just absolute chaos. I can't imagine how in the world you would manage all of that.
That's funny. I have a video on my YouTube channel. It's somebody came to film me at work, and we actually, there's a picture on there where somebody came with their pets, and it's a group shot. It's a bearded dragon, lizard, a rat, and a bird. And the bird is sitting on the bearded dragon, and the rat is right next to them, and that's the little family shot I did for them.
Oh, goodness me. Oh, that's so funny. So, portrait photographers, they work very hard to capture the essence of a person's personality. And you mentioned just now that dogs and other animals typically don't behave the same way as people do. Oftentimes they're more well-behaved. But I imagine it's quite a challenge to capture the personality of a dog or a cat, let's say. I mean, how do you do that? What is it about how you work that gets that animal to do what it is that you want them to do and show their sort of personality, their inner self, as it were?
Yeah, that's a great question. And, that's sort of the key to the whole thing. Look, there's two ways to go about that. Well, there's a couple aspects to it, and if someone's coming in with their pet into your studio, you have time to mess around. When someone comes into our studio, we shut the door and we let them off the leash or out of the crate and whatever, and just run around, get used to it, come smell, dogs especially. And I will say dogs are 90% of the business or more, so we could talk about that. They want to smell you. They don't want to be intimidated by you. They want to get used to the surroundings. And so you really have time to let them get to know you, relax, play with them, throw the ball, give them a treat, let them understand that this is all great. Even if you're outside, you've got a lot of distractions out there, but it's basically the same thing. You want to play a little bit with them and get them to understand you're not the vet. You're not going to be poking them with any needles. Yeah, a lot of times they get in the car and they come into some place and poke. So they do make associations. So that's one thing you want to do. Doing the sort of high volume kind of work that we do, where we're taking appointments every 20 minutes or every 30 minutes in the pet store, you don't have that same kind of time. But I've discovered, over years and experience that really if you just go up to the dog, present your hand, from underneath, and let them smell it before you pet them. A lot of people like to walk up to a dog and just put the hand over and pet them, but they're not really comfortable like that. They just want to be the first one to sniff you and see you're okay, say something, speak in a nice high voice, and once he's comfortable, you give him a little scratch on the ear, and so you've established that connection. The thing about animals is they don't smile, but they do have body language that lets you know this is the equivalent. And for one of the things when you're looking at the pet portraits, you'll see that if they're alert and they're happy and they're not fearful, the ears are up, they're looking at you. People love, with the cocked heads, the tilted head, especially with the puppies, and that lets you know that you've got their personality, you've got their attention. The biggest thing, what I call when the dogs cat's ears come up and forward, that's the equivalent of them smiling. So that's what we're looking for when we're taking pictures. If you look at, anybody's pet portraits, you could kind of tell if the ears are back, this dog was nervous. If the tail is down or between the legs, this dog was nervous. And it's not going to be such a great shot, in my opinion. It may be the only one you can get sometimes, but it's not the best. It's kind of like the kid that won't smile.
Earlier on, we drew parallels between this and school photography. And of course, the typical school photographer has that little rubber chicken thing, that they wave at the kids and say, hey, look at the rubber chicken. Mm-hmm. Do you have any little props like that you put to use to get the attention of animals so that they will look at the camera?
There's a big difference between dogs and cats and working with them. Cats are extremely visual and pay no attention to almost anything else. Noises, things don't really bother a cat. If it's a kitten, you might be able to deal like it's a puppy. But for the most part, cats, you need to wave something, the feather on a stick, the little toy bird on a stick, things like that. You can get the cat's attention, and they will follow it pretty well, most of them. You have to have a few of them that look different. The one noise that cats like is crinkling. There's actually a cat toy that they sell in all the stores, and it's just sort of like paper crinkling kind of a noise, and that's like the one noise they pay attention to. But with dogs, it's different. It's a lot like babies, like you said, the rubber chicken. I use all kinds of squeak toys. Again, I'll refer you to the video I have on YouTube because it shows me working, and you'll see this box of toys and whistles and slides and squeak toys and clown noises and all kinds of stuff, because that's what gets the dog's attention. If you know how to whistle, that might work. And I've got a whole repertoire of noises that I make myself when the props stop working. What happens with the dog is they will look at, and their ears will go up, and they'll get curious for any new noise. But you got one or two times to use it, and then, okay, that's not new anymore. So if you really want to do this right, you have to have a whole bunch of different kinds of sounds. Trust me, I practiced for years in my car just making noises. Luckily, without getting arrested, so that's pretty good. If you look on my YouTube channel, you'll see, how to get a dog's attention. It's actually, Nigel, it's funny. It's a 30-second clip of me making noises. It's really funny.
Let's talk about the types of people that come to you for this type of photography. You obviously deal with a lot of them. Are there any qualities that make them different from other pet owners who don't bother to get photographs of their animals?
Of course, I don't know that much about people that don't do it because I don't see them. Here's what I've found out in the last few years. There's different kinds of pets owners. There's some who go, oh, it's just a dog. That's the dog. And there's some who go, that's my baby. Oh, my God, look how cute he is. Here's a picture. Look, here's another picture. Here's another picture. Here's a picture from yesterday. Here's a picture from this morning. Look. And you can see that on the social media
right.
and things like that. And then you see people who've got these pets and they're chained to a tree in the back of their yard, 20 hours a day. So it really ranges as far as pet people go. There is a whole, what I would say, a change in the culture of where, and I'll just go back to like when my parents or even when I grew up, you'd go to school, you'd come out, you'd graduate, and you're 21, 22, and if you weren't married, something's wrong. And having kids. What's going on today, in modern culture is people are getting together, whether they're married or living together, but they're not having their kids until they want to finish school, they want to start their own career, the women and the men, and they're well into their 30s and before they're having kids. And what they do is they've got pets, but they treat them like they're kids. That whole instinct is there to take care and pamper. And I must say that the pet industry as a whole, I'm not sure if they recognized this and capitalized on it, or they're the ones that actually started getting people to think like this. When you go to the pet stores, you'll see treats in the shape of a pizza, as if the dog would know, right? It's like, you see treats in the shape of ice cream, doggy ice cream, and, doggy clothes, dog hats, dog sweaters. I just did a calendar that actually just came out in the stores now called Cats in Sweaters. And it's we have just every month is a picture of a cat in a sweater. Now, who would think years ago? I never would think of a cat in a sweater, but I was a little surprised. Even I was surprised when they called up and said, "Can you do it? Take pictures. We have someone who makes cat sweaters." Okay, there's an industry out there of pet clothing, and so there's people who are, like I said, I don't know which came first, but it's definitely the people that are coming to get their pet portraits. They really feel a bond with the animals. They really make them part of their family. It's a family portrait. Even if they do have kids, that dog or cat is in the pictures. Sometimes it's both, dogs and cats. We do family portraits too. And we always say, we love to do pictures of people and their owners because the dogs are really their owners. So, it's different than it was. But there's people that like to do stuff like these same people that do the pet pictures. They do pet events. There's, doggy play dates now. There are doggy daycare where you could drop just like kids, you drop them off and they play with other dogs for the day. And that's a whole industry. My clients are those kinds of people. They're just in love with their animals and they're not great with the camera. That's the other thing I need. Even if they are, Nigel, when they see what I do in my portraits of animals, they call me anyway because they want what I do.
So once we've gotten them in front of the camera, into the studio or the pet store or wherever it is that you've set up, what are some of the logistic challenges that you have to deal with? I mean, I'm sure that this might be a case of anything from clockwork precision to tightly managed chaos.
You're barking mad. There's one thing that you have to worry about or have a concern about no matter where you are, whether you're in the studio or outdoors or in the pet store on location or in the home. And that's that animals like to pee and poop.
You don't say.
It's not like they raise their hand and say, "Excuse me, can I go to the..." Yeah, I have the key to the bathroom. This is the first thing you have to learn about. Be prepared with that. Have some good cleaner, lots of paper towels, and something good that works on the carpet. Obviously, in a studio, you can set your hours, and what I do is I set my appointments with usually an hour between them because I allow for appointments to run over. I allow for people who are going to come early, and so that hour leeway there gives me time to coordinate that as well. It's a little bit tougher in the pet stores because people, even though they have appointments, they want to come in early and watch what you're doing, and so you're working with a dog on location or out in the park as well. When you're doing outdoor shots, people are watching and they're walking their dogs and they stop, and then that your subject is now distracted by these other animals that are there standing around watching, and you can't really turn around and say, "Can you go away please with your dog?" Because then they just think you're being rude. They're not understanding it's a big distraction, and that's really tough. I'll tell you, at holiday times it gets really crowded. For me, where we're doing these location shoots, even though we try to work by appointment only, there's people who will just show up and they want pictures done, and it can get really crowded and busy. And in the beginning I could do it all by myself, but I bring an assistant sometimes too. The way that I work is different from a lot of photographers. I have it sort of scaled down so that I don't want to waste a day showing pictures. I have the person here in front of me. I take the pictures. Within 5 minutes of being done, we're sitting down at the computer looking at them. It's all in one. It's a session and the viewing session together. And so I'm not messing with uploading pictures to the internet. I'm not messing with printing proofs. I'm not messing with crazy editing for 2 weeks before they could see them. And I know on a wedding you have to do that, but for portrait work, I'm not doing that. So we're scheduling people that you come in, you take the pictures, you look at them, you buy something, and that's your whole session. So that's what I do, and it's all about scheduling in advance. You're talking about getting chaotic and stuff, and it really just comes down to organizing and trying to get people to go along with your plan.
Are there any things that you have to do to keep things pet friendly? I mean, if you're in a pet store, I would imagine it's pretty pet friendly to begin with, or at least most of them are. But in a studio, let's say we've got a photographer out there who thinks to themselves, this sounds like a boatload of fun. I'm going to become a pet photographer, and I'm going to do this in my garage at home or whatever studio they might have or something. But not every place is going to be pet friendly. I guess it's a bit like making things baby proof or kid friendly or something like that.
Yeah, definitely is. You don't want to have a lot of stuff on the floor that a dog, can just walk over to and pick up. Especially if you have somebody come in with 2 or 3 dogs and you're working with one and the other 2 are just walking and running around. Before you try the group shot, I always try and get individual first. But you have to watch out for electrical outlets or wires that a puppy might come and chew on. I would definitely say if your studio has a carpeting, you really want to be aware of that. And once the dog goes to the bathroom on that, it's a little tough. I try really hard to get people to, even if they tell me they walk their dog, I say, once you get here, please just walk the dog again. You just don't want to have too much stuff on the floor, really. I try and keep a bowl of water handy for them so they could just go and drink when they want to. One of the things that I've learned is that I don't give treats arbitrarily. I always have to check and ask, is this kind of treat okay? Because it seems a lot of dogs have allergies to different kinds of foods or they're on a special diet. I'm lucky. My studio is in a building that's attached to a deli at the other end of the building. So what I do is I go over, when I have a photo session, I always, I get a quarter pound of chopped up cheese or sliced cheese because almost every dog can eat that and they love it. So that always works well. Yeah, you just have to be careful. For me, the other thing is that the equipment that you have, a light stand, for instance, or tripod, should really be heavy duty enough, or maybe you want to put a sandbag on it because you may get dogs, especially the bigger rambunctious dogs, Labrador retrievers and some things like that, quite easily could bump into it and knock your equipment over. That would really stink. It's happened to me, so I know what happens. Of course, you learn from that. These days I go, if I'm on location, I use duct tape and we tape down the light stands.
Even things like certain types of house plants. I mean, a lot of people may have plants in their studio for decoration and that kind of thing, but some of them are actually quite poisonous to dogs.
You're right, dogs and cats, and there's different plants that are poisonous. I wouldn't leave anything, on the floor within reach where they might get to it. It's if you have plants, cover them, put them in another room or something. That's a great point.
Let's talk about marketing for a second. Obviously, you have an awful lot of connections with other businesses and all of that kind of thing that bring in a lot of business for you. But what would you say, if you could condense it down, are your top 3 marketing channels that you use to keep business going at such a high volume?
One is referrals. I would say the number one is referrals, what we tend to refer to as word of mouth. I've been doing this, as I said, since 1980. So this January will be my 35th year. And I paid for advertising once. And I've been able to, aside from the school photography, we've been doing the baby portraits. We did the weddings and family portraits and everything without having to advertise. I created a sort of a referral system. We'd give a customer a sheet and say, hey, just fill out names of your friends on here. We're going to call them up and offer them a free picture as a gift from you to them. And so it makes them look great to their friend. It gives us an in to the phone call to say, hey, your friend told us to call, and we give them a free picture so they get it, and then it gives us the opportunity to meet them and do an upsell. That's what we did with the baby pictures. We don't really do the telemarketing anymore. We did telemarketing with that, and with the kids, and it was really quite effective. But what I learned from it is that the referrals and the word of mouth is just awesome. So we still, to this day, for instance, when somebody books an appointment, we tell them, hey, if you get a friend to book an appointment too, you're each going to get a $25 print credit. So the incentive, we give them the incentive to do that. And I still, don't pay. I might have tried a Facebook ad in the past or something, but it didn't work. Now, one of the other things that I do is my marketing channels is through our vendor associates. This this is one of the most brilliant things, Nigel, because, we're working in these other stores. They give out flyers with my information on it. They put links on their website to my website. They put up posters. We supply them. We supply them with 2-foot by 3-foot posters that they put up in their window saying, pet photographer coming. And, here's the number, call, make an appointment. So the fact that I have all these other places doing our advertising and promoting us because we're coming to their store, they want people to come to their store. So it helps them and it helps us too. In recent years, it's turned out that social media has been a big help to me. I've sort of figured out how to use Twitter, and I know most people are on the, thinking in terms of Facebook these days, and Facebook helps too. But I have right now over 30,000 followers on Twitter, something like 30,300, and I've actually been able to create more business through my connections on Twitter than actually on Facebook. And I've done it on Twitter, not so much connecting to individual customers, but more so connecting to people who own stores and other businesses, or they're writers and they write about it and put it in the blog and people call after that. More so business to business, but the businesses that I'm connecting with are in the pet business. And so we wind up having that, sort of symbiotic relationship going where they have a place where I could come and do shots, and I have a following. There's no doubt after all these years that I've been doing this. So pretty much if I go someplace to a location and we send out an email to my clients, they're going to go to this person's store. They've never been there before. So the shop owner is thrilled that he's got new people coming in. And I would say, I really got that end of it figured out pretty well, I think. I'm sure I could do better. I always could do better. This for me is it's the word of mouth and the referrals, and just the associations that I have with all different vendors, and then the social media I've been able to use.
The way that you're using Twitter is exactly the way that I advise other photographers to use it, and that is, it's not always the best way to get new clients directly, but it's a way to network with other vendors and businesses who also interact with your target market as well.
Yeah, what I've learned almost from the beginning was that I have to be proactive to make that happen. Although at this point, I've got a pretty good following and reputation, but I still, to this day, I use TweetDeck, and there's other things, Hootsuite and all those, that can organize. You can imagine with 30,000 people, if I'm looking at my feed, it's a lot of stuff there. So I have it organized into, I have my columns, by location. I have it categorized by pet photography and different things, and one of my categories is pet writers. So I'm always looking for people who are writing for pet magazines, or they have a pet radio show or TV show or something like that. I reach out to them. I say, hey, how about a great story on the people that come to a pet photographer? Or, hey, how about an interesting story about doing animal shelter photography, And you know what? I get a lot of responses back. And, I've got, I don't know how many, but there's articles, where they're quoting me, or where they're interviewing me, or where they have my pictures and they're writing about me. And all that stuff just helps in the end. You put it on your website, on your press page or something like that. And people come and look, and they want to see. I should say, Nigel, probably what helps me too, because of my social media stuff, I have a YouTube channel. I have a few hundred subscribers, but I have over 5,000 contacts. They used to call your YouTube friends. They now call them contacts. I've got Google+, I've got LinkedIn, I've got Twitter, and I've got Facebook. All that stuff adds up. And the way that I use it, if you do a search terms for, look, I'm on Long Island. If you do pet photographer Long Island, or pet photography Long Island, or Long Island pet photography, I'm number one on Google. And I've got so much social media out there that on the first page of Google, if you do that, my name or pet photographer, I actually come up 3 or 4 times from different things. So when someone's looking for a pet photographer and they Google it, if you're here on where I live, my name is going to be first. And that's solely because, I'm so active with it, and I keep it up, and I put the right keywords in. And, this is really important. This is how all that social media really ties back to getting people to sign up.
That's a great lesson, I think, for anybody, regardless of the type of photography business that they have, is to be proactive. Take every opportunity that you can to connect with people who might want to do an article about you or be able to host a guest article from you on some aspect of your business. And as long as they connect with the type of people who you want to do business with, then that's a great thing. Plus, also, of course, as you mentioned, it's really great for helping your search engine rankings and that kind of thing. It's an important lesson, for everybody. So one last question before we finish up. What do you see are the top mistakes that new photographers to this type of business are making?
Number one, and it transcends pet photography, but for me, what I see as someone who's seen a whole lot of different trends come and go and stay over the years and been involved. And let me just throw in there, I'm involved, I'm a member of the PPA. I'm involved in some local photography organizations, Chamber of Commerce, so I'll just throw that in. One of the mistakes people make is to sort of be isolated and think they could do this all alone. That's one of the mistakes they make. You can't these days. You just can't do this kind of thing alone. You need to get some mentoring, some advice, some experience. You need to get people on your side. You need to learn from others. I think one of the biggest mistakes photographers today make, whether they're pet photographers or not, is to think that all they have to do is go watch some videos on YouTube and they're going to be a photographer. I think they're missing out a lot on, some of the stuff you really need to learn from somebody teaching you, talking to you, showing you what's right, showing you what's wrong. The educational component seems to be missing a lot. People think that self-taught means that I'm self-taught in 3 weekends. Self-taught might mean I spent 10 years learning how to do this right, but too many kids are picking up and older people, they're picking up cameras because it's the digital revolution and everybody's got one and they could take a nice picture. There's no doubt that anybody could pick up a camera and get a great shot. The difference between a professional and anyone picking up a camera is a professional could do it when you tell them to and when they want to, and they're not hopefully just taking 1,000 pictures and saying I hope I got one. Maybe they took 1,000 and there's 1,000 good ones. Because when I grew up taking photos, of course with film, you didn't press that button until you saw the picture because it cost you money every time you did. I have that mentality, and I'll tell you a little bit off track here. When I teach, when I teach some workshops and things, the first thing we do the first day, we take a little piece of paper, like a Post-it, and we cover up the little LCD viewer, and we spend the first couple of days taking pictures without having to be able to look at them after you took them, because to me that just means you're not really seeing it first, you're seeing it after and then going back to do it. So it's one of the ways that I teach. The other thing is even these really good and talented people picking up the camera and making some sort of great photography statement, they're lacking the business side of it. And I think this kills more photographers than anything, even really great photographers, because I've seen really mediocre people have some really great business skills and do really well as a photographer in their business. And I've seen some really great photographers without business skills do really poorly. And I think the biggest thing that people miss is that it's one thing to be a photographer as your hobby, but if you want it to be a business, you have to study business. It's really that simple. I know photography's, we hired a few people that went to a photography school. They spent like $30,000 to go to this school for a year and never took a business class about how to run a business. So I just thought that was crazy. But that's what happens. They get so hung up on, I think another mistake people make, Nigel, is they get hung up on the equipment. They get so like, I have to have the newest and the latest and the sensor and no sensor and, mirrorless and shutterless and fingerless and lensless, on and on and on. And, what I know is that, just learn how to take the pictures and stop relying on the equipment. This is another thing. They're not really getting the technique down. They're thinking that much like we do, with self-esteem, we think that it's the outside stuff. Well, I'll get a fancy car, I'll get a bigger house, I'll get a new hairdo. And, that doesn't really do it on the inside. That does it on the outside. So, this whole obsession with, the equipment and the longer lens and this and that, it's not going to help the photography. It's really not, when it comes down to it. I see one other thing that's really makes me crazy is the obsession with thinking that the pictures that I take can be fixed later in Photoshop. And so what I'm seeing is over and over and over again is people taking these shots that I would never take, even 25 years ago. I still belong to some of these wedding groups and stuff and portrait groups and Facebook, and I see these pictures and oh, well, we'll just fix it in Photoshop. I mean, you must see that where you are too.
Oh, yeah, I do. There's a huge reliance on the technology, not just the cameras, but also, like you say, Photoshop. And then there's the other thing, too, where they say, well, all I need to do is just throw some Photoshop actions at it, click a button, and hey, I got a Monet or some other kind of fancy painting version of this photograph without actually having to apply any real thought or purpose to it.
Yeah.
I think it's a shame, really, in some regards, that we've come to that. These tools are great, don't get me wrong, but the idea that, well, you can just do it by clicking one button, well, that means then that anyone can do it. You can sit a monkey at the keyboard and have him click the button, and you'll get just as good a photograph.
I think that's, a big mistake. And I think the other thing is that a lot of people are jumping into the photography business, calling themselves professionals, but they're not actually doing what they're supposed to, like, getting the city, state, or county license, registering with the tax department, collecting taxes, paying for insurance, all those kinds of things that set you aside from being someone with a camera and a real professional, because I think this is a mistake they make, and down the road it'll come back to bite them.
Yeah, there's a bunch of swear words there. This is supposed to be clean, family friendly. Don't be using words like taxes and licenses and insurance.
I know, it's scary. Sad. It's sad that people think, well, I'm a pro. I get kind of sad for clients when I see some of these people picking up cameras, watching some videos and saying, I'm now a professional photographer and I'm going to charge you money to take your pictures, and then they're on Facebook saying, oh my God, I took this picture. Can you fix it for me? I think you're trying to get more specific with pet photography. Well, the same thing happens in the pet photography as well as that. I mean, it's just an overall kind of thing. What I've seen in the pet photography business is this: there's people who do photography at shelters, and they're taking pictures of, which is great. They volunteer. They go down to the dog pound and they'll photograph them and try and help get them adopted. But they somehow want to think again without thinking about the whole business aspect of it, that now they could be a pet photographer too, but it's the same thing. A lot of great photographers, the biggest mistake is not studying the business, and I'll tell you what else, Nigel, is a lot of them are not suited to be a business person, and as good as their pictures are, business just isn't their thing, and what they're not figuring out is it's time to stop pretending, get some realities, stop calling yourself a professional. I think businesses in general, something like 80% are out of business after 5 years on a new business. And it's got to be way higher than that in photography, because you just can't compete at that level without some business knowledge.
I think in those particular cases, if somebody has the sense to realize that, look, I'm a great photographer, I love the art of it, I'm very passionate about this is something that I really want to do, but I really suck at the business part and the marketing. Well, partner with somebody who knows that stuff.
There you go.
Who likes to play at the stuff that you don't like doing.
That's it. Partnership is really, that's an excellent way to get around it. Join somebody in a studio. But, this is, one of the things you could do. Of course, people don't want to. They're in such a hurry to, they don't want to put in the time. We call it paying your dues, and a lot of people just don't want to. They don't want to go work. They say, well, I want to be a photographer. I say, great. Take some classes, go to your local photo studio, ask them if you could assist them, help them out in the studio for free, be an intern, do an apprenticeship. But people seem to not want to do it. They want to just start making the money, and I don't think it's going to work out for them in the long run.
I agree. Well, Richie, this has been fantastic. I have had so much fun talking with you about all this. The time has just fled past. It really has.
Me too.
This has been really fun. It's been fascinating. I think you've had so many incredibly important and valid things to say, and I've really enjoyed learning all about this whole sort of pet photography model that you've got going. I really appreciate it. You've been so generous with your time and your experience and your knowledge. And on behalf of everybody that is listening, I really would like to thank you for that.
Oh, you're welcome. And, I thank you. I thank you for the opportunity for letting me get my voice out there and, just talk. Look, my goal in doing this thing, I hope somebody learns something, and it could do a better job of what they're going to do, or make some decisions and think about what they're doing. That's all.
I have no doubt of it. Well, thank you so much, and you have a great day.
You too. So long from New York. Woof.